Okay, great. All right, well, we will call to order this meeting of the Middleton Finance and Personnel Committee for June 18th. Can we start with a roll call? Bill, please.
Caniro,
Here.
Lorman,
Here.
and I am not seeing Alder Jackson online at the moment, so just
Okay.
have the two, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, please let us know when he arrives. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of our June 4th Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Okay. The only thing I would note is that we should make sure that throughout the document, it's referring to the Finance and Personnel Committee. I will probably not say that, but but if I make a reference to Finance Committee, please add personnel. Thank you. All right. Well, with that note, the minutes of the June 4th, 2024 Finance and Personnel Committee meeting are approved. Next item is the audit of the bills. Bill, do you have any updates for us?
Yes, I have one update this evening that is for the UW-Madison Police Department. It is for a pass-through of grant funding for a speed enforcement grant. The total amount is $2,098.23.
$1,098.23. Okay. Can I get a motion?
Lorman will make motion. We accept amended bills as.
Okay. I will second that. Discussion. Questions for Bill? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the audit of the bills with the addition of grant funding of $2,098.23 for UW-Madison Police signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Bill, do you need us to get Jeff's signature later, or is the two of us sufficient?
Two is sufficient since that's a quorum.
Okay. All right, moving on to resolutions. We have four. First one is Resolution 2024-28, approving an amendment to the 2024 budget for a Department of Natural Resources grant for parks projects. This comes to us from staff. May I have a motion to approve?
Lorman will make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-2028.
Thank you, and I will second that. Discussion. Is Kevin here? Yes. I just had a question on page 4 of the packet, which is where we are. It mentions that we will use grant funds. That's a different grant, correct? Or is that this grant?
So we have a urban forestry grant from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources from 2023. We have that extended through the end of this year. And that's the grant that we'd use for spongy moth, our gravel bed, and our proposed street tree inventory.
Okay. So the total cost of the work needs to be $50,000, and then we will get 25,000 back from, that's the 50% match?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And Bill, can you scroll down to the next page? Please. I guess keep going. It's the actual resolution. The table. I want to make sure Randall doesn't catch another thing that we left out. So why is under the capital project fund expenditures, so the $1,000 adjustment is coming from operating budget?
There was $24,000 in that capital improvement fund. So we had to come up with $1,000. So out of operating, yes.
Okay. Shouldn't that 1,000 be coming from somewhere?
Yeah, so what we had is we had budgeted and had borrowed for 24,000 for that project in the capital fund. We do not have the $25,000 in grant revenue budgeted, so this resolution would budget 25,000 in revenue, and that would be allocated 24,000 for the street tree inventory, 1,000 towards the line where the invasive species control is. The gravel bed had some expenses that were charged to that line in the capital fund. The remainder of those expenses are charged to the operating. But that we don't need to adjust the budget for the operating because that's going to happen within the current approved operating budget, is my understanding.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that explanation. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 2024-28, approving an amendment to the 2024 budget for a Department of Natural Resources grant for parks projects signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, the ayes have it. Okay, moving on to resolution number 2, 2024-29, amending the 2024 approved budget and authorizing the use of general contingency funds for a conservancy lands plan update. This comes to us from CLC, from us, and from council.
Lorman will like to make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-2029.
All right, and I will second that. Discussion.
Looks like we've vetted this thoroughly.
Yeah, I think we did too. All right, there being no discussion, all those in favor of approving resolution 2024-29, amending the 2024 approved budget and authorizing the use of general contingency funds for a conservancy lands plan update signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes, well, any opposed? No, the ayes have it. Moving on to our third resolution, 2024-30, authorizing holding a referendum relating to the Middleton stormwater utility raising its annual charge. This comes to us from the former Stormwater Utility Board, from Finance, and from Council.
So yes, Lorman would like to make a motion that we approve a resolution, I guess, one of three.
Do you have a version to?
So I have to like to discuss.
Yep.
Selection. Version 2.
Okay. So Lorman moves for discussion, the approval of resolution 2024-30, version 2. I will second that.
Okay.
All right, now we can discuss. Let you go first since you made the motion.
Would Eric like to?
Eric, would you like to take the podium, please?
Provide some reflection, thoughts?
Well, the second and third version, they both, all the versions allow maximum flexibility in terms of types of things we can fund. Projects, one was just a flag to go back to both allow us to adjust with further study and that council adjust the rates without referendum. 2 years. That initial starting rate. This any better? All right. And Alder Haniro submitted a modification to version 2. Really just rewriting some things and adding some things to the resolution. Clarity. I don't know if that's
Yep.
been shared.
Well,
Yeah,
I brought a copy for you. Okay.
Where you feel.
Well, I totally support a version of version 2. And I'm going to paraphrase Jim Bakuber, who is a constituent of mine and emailed, I think, all of us, but our peer cities have utility rates which are 2 to 3 times larger than Middleton's current rate. And so the current rate of $45 per ERU was arbitrarily set, as was the original $15 per ERU rate. There wasn't a rate study to back those up. And even the higher fee doesn't come close to funding the city's stormwater management program. So property taxes will have to make up the shortfall. Was this the first time we had ever done a rate study?
There was financial stuff done before the 2014. I'd say it was not as complete and certainly not, followed when they came up with that $15 number originally.
Okay. Because I would like, I didn't find the final version labeled final on the city's website, and I think that will be an important document to have posted prominently somewhere so that we can refer people to it.
From 2014?
No, the current one, the one that's in our packet is still labeled draft, but I know council had approved it, so I think that should be updated. So my reasons for wanting to make some changes to this resolution, it wasn't because the resolution didn't do its job. It was written very well. It explained the whole process. And the technical detail was very good, but this is the only piece of public information that's going to be out there yet now. And so I just felt it would be important to add some things to explain kind of how you and Jim at a committee of the whole meeting had pointed out that, this would be charged to all properties instead of only those that, like the new expenses that are eligible, such as street sweeping, that's being paid for by property taxes only. And so churches and government, we don't pay for that. So those are really the reasons why I made some changes to the packet now, or to the resolution. Can we go down to the part where we get to the question itself? So the question, the one concern I had about this version is that I could see residents saying, well, I don't want to, I don't know what the fee is going to be in the future. Right. And that's a valid concern. And so instead of saying in order to adequately fund the city's stormwater management program, I suggested and keep going down, that is adequate to fund. And if you keep going, I explained, added stuff from, I think the fact sheet that or the draft fact sheet that accompanied this to explain who's going to be paying for it. And then adding in here that it's beginning January 25, the fee would be $23 per quarter. Think that's. So I don't know if that question, Matt, would pass muster.
As revised.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me read it again, but I didn't find anything concerning about it.
And I shifted away from the facilities language to management program or management activities because we are asking for more than that. And I also think it's important to be upfront about our desire to be able to hire a dedicated stormwater person. So that's in there too. And with absolutely no disrespect intended or slight, I thought it was important to say so that the person could undertake projects in a more timely fashion. Because I think that will be a big selling point. I know Eric fields a lot of questions about what's going on with Graber Pond and Misty Valley. And the truth is, it's not moving as fast as it could if Eric or someone else could focus 100% on this activity and not be pulled in many different directions. And I just think we need to be clear about that with our residents.
Can I interject?
Sure.
That's really I requested 2 positions in that study, or it's 1.8 positions.
Okay. All right, then we should.
And my only other comment on your draft was I didn't issue the study until February of 24.
Okay.
Although SWUB asked for it in 23.
Okay. So we're asked for it in 23. So the rate study completed in 2024, recommended that. By adding up to 2. I'm just gonna say 2. 2 dedicated stormwater positions. And then based on the 2024 rate study. Okay, so I can make those changes to the word or pages version and share that with Brian for sharing with council later. Alder Lorman, do you have any concerns about the revisions? Oh, I also changed 2 word stormwater to 1 word stormwater. It was going back and forth, so I picked one and went with it.
And just for parliamentary procedure purposes, it probably would be most appropriate to have a substitute motion to consider 2A as the new item on the table for motion and approval, if that's the direction the body's willing to go.
Well, I will make a motion to substitute version 2A for version 2.
Okay, Norman, second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
And so, how you feeling about all this? Back to version 1 versus version 2 versus version 2A versus version 3. You're the professional, I'm the non-professional. I'm just here asking questions and,
Well, I think we need the funding.
yeah, oh yeah, no, I'm 100% behind.
I'm not a professional when it comes to trying to structure a referendum. So I am nervous, I guess, on whether or not this will pass. But I think it's the way we ought to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
An honest assessment of what we need.
yeah, if the referendum supports technically what you believe we need and leave the word smithing up to, I guess, others and city attorney review and things like that. I completely understand where you're at. We want to deliver something to the public that they'll understand, that they'll find acceptable, and I couldn't agree more. I'd like the resolution to simply say, we need this,
Yeah.
please approve.
Yep.
Yeah. And obviously we want flexibility to allow you to do your job, do your work.
And I really feel that residents in Middleton they're not going to like having their fee more than double. It's going to be spun that way by, some people. But I'm confident that they will not balk at what we're asking, knowing that 1, it's based on actual costs. And 2, some of the costs that are being added to what we consider the stormwater management program are things that right now property taxes have to pay for. And so it's going to be spread more fairly. And 3, I know Middleton likes to be low on the table or the chart of tax rates, property tax rates, but I don't think people would like knowing that McFarland, Fitchburg, and Monona are all, charging more for doing, I think, I would say a better job funding their stormwater management needs than we are. I think that's not something people would appreciate.
And I also see it from the standpoint of, there's just such great need. This is such a infrastructure-wise an invaluable thing that we have to manage and get behind and always be actually ahead of. And
Yep. So we'll just have to
I mean,
do,
it's our job, I guess it's our job to sell it. We'll
Yeah.
do our best.
that's what I was just going to say. We'll just have to do a good job making sure people understand what's at stake.
Yeah. Few constituents I've talked to about this, I've put it to them pretty matter of factly and said, this is one of those things that, sometimes you do sit back and look at the numbers and go, well, maybe we can do this, or maybe we don't have to do that. But I said, this is of great need.
Mhm.
I mean, that's that.
Okay, so Brian, I just sent you a PDF of the version that took out, changed 2023 to 24 where it was appropriate and mentioned 2 dedicated stormwater positions. And so, I'll have you bring it up if you can. Although Alder Lorman can see the the edits that I made on the hard copy, but,
Did you forward it to me?
Yeah, just.
Okay, there it is.
oh, I should have sent it to Bill.
That's good.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second for.
So we had a motion. I made a substitute, a motion to substitute the edited version of 2A.
And I seconded
And you
that.
seconded that. And so, all those in favor of accepting the edited version of 2A of resolution, yeah, of resolution 2024-30, authorizing holding a referendum relating to the Middleton stormwater utility, raising its annual charge, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. That will be the version we pass along to council for our meeting. Moving on to our last resolution, we have 2024-31, supporting a carbon reduction program grant application to convert city-owned streetlights to LEDs.
Gorman will make a motion for resolution 2024-31.
Right, and I will second that. Any discussion?
This is the final product of what we have been working on for the past year. If I'm correct.
Sean, can you confirm that at the mic?
This is what we started a year ago with a grant that we applied for and got, and we agreed to. Yeah.
It does say to complete the conversion of city-owned streetlights.
I think Kelly Hilliard has
Yeah.
been spearheading that
Yeah.
and I'm not up to speed on
No, that's
this.
okay.
Okay.
And this is where we are. We're done. This is
With-
going in front
with
of-
ours.
With our piece. We're gonna
Mhm.
get this from the common council. Okay.
Well, I'm excited about this
Yep.
and I think we should have some sort of celebration when the last city-owned fixture is replaced. So all those in further discussion?
Nope.
Nope. All those in favor of approving resolution 2024-31, supporting a carbon reduction program grant application to convert city-owned streetlights to LEDs, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to agreements and contracts. We have 3, starting with a proposal from Mead and Hunt for the development of legal descriptions for airport hangars, and this comes to us from staff.
We'll make a motion that we move ahead with the proposal from Mead Hunt for development of legal description of airport hangars.
Okay, and I will second that. On page 69, it makes reference to the city's designated representative. Will that be you, Brian?
Yeah, for most.
Okay.
Yeah, for all contractual signings and things like that, I would be the designated person.
Okay, and I'm glad to see that Hunt expects to be done with the drafts within 30 days of approving this agreement. I think this is a great idea. I fully support the concept, and Bill explained to me how the changes in state law related to personal property taxes has changed, so that's what makes this necessary. What I'm concerned about or hesitant about is using TID 3 money for this instead of the Airport Enterprise Fund. The TID policy, we did use, council did use TID funding for the airport management plan. But to me, that's consistent with what is in the policy, which is Maury Airport, or one of the eligible expenses is Maury Airport facility and aesthetic improvements consistent with the airport master plan. And I don't see this as either a facility or aesthetic improvement, and it actually isn't in the airport master plan. So I am wondering if this can be charged to the Airport Enterprise Fund instead.
And if I may, the reason for the staff recommendation to fund this from the TIF district is because at this point, with the hangars being located within the TIF district, the property taxes paid by the airport hangars are received fully by the TIF as in the form of TIF increment, and it is not revenue of the airport fund. So trying to follow the principle of matching revenues and expenditures to the fund. If you follow that logic, that would lead to TID 3. And I did review with the city attorney that it would be an eligible TID 3 cost. That said, I think that the city council has the authority to determine what would be expenditures of which fund, including the enterprise funds. And since the airport is not a regulated utility like the water utility, I think that the council likely could charge this to the airport enterprise fund if that's the direction you'd like to go.
Thanks for that, Bill. And 2 points. One, I always use like the but-for test. We have that for TID assistance for developments, but for this assistance, something wouldn't happen. And to me, but for the existence of the airport, the city wouldn't be incurring this $39,000 charge. So to me, that's why it should go on the airport enterprise fund. And then I have to think about the explanation of, the increment is going to, or the tax increment is going to TID 3, so we could take it back out. I guess that makes sense with development too. I don't know, Alder Lorman, how do you feel about this?
Well, I'm inclined to simply stick with, as proposals put forth, from Bill. This is what his job is. This is what he's paid to do. I gave it some thought from other angles, in terms of it being an enterprise expense. And I really don't, when I look at the airport and I see what the enterprise fund does, and I see it's really there to maintain and pay for the, really operational elements of the airport, maintenance, and contributed, what we're responsible for in terms of meeting grant fulfillment when there is taxiway, runway, and this type of major work done. And that's what we really need that money there for. This is, so that's kind of my logic to stick with Bill's advice. And the airport enterprise fund is quite fixed. It doesn't have a lot of revenue. It has actually no other revenue than its two sources, which really hasn't been any significant increase in. So airport did spend quite a bit of money last year for a truck, which was, strictly political move, because we're going to have unleaded fuel. It's inevitable. We spend $50,000 on a truck that now sits there and offers unleaded fuel at a price that just is still as competitive as leaded fuel. You can't make people buy something that costs more. So the airport's already taken on a burden that wasn't really necessary for the operation of the airport and its financial stability. So, if we're to keep it viable and is operating enterprise, and I'm happy to very much to support with Bill's recommendation. Yeah, I think we'll need that enterprise money for other things down the road that will be coming up.
Okay.
Related to this.
Bill?
If I may, I had one additional comment. Regardless of the funding source, we would recommend that if the proposal is recommended for approval, it would be subject to city administrator and city attorney approval. We are continuing to work with Dane County to try to reduce the costs if there is any way to do that. City Attorney Matt Fleming had some additional information that came in late last week. We haven't had a chance to talk to Dane County about that. So we just want to make sure there's that flexibility if we do find a way to lower the cost.
Okay, I'll move to amend the main motion to make it subject to city administrator and city attorney approval.
No, we'll second that.
Okay, All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the main motion is amended. I will support this motion since Alder Jackson isn't here to move this forward to council. I do anticipate getting pushback from some of my constituents because, you know, the Polko survey that was done to support the airport master plan made it pretty clear that people wanted users to pay for all the costs associated with the airport. And so I'm anticipating some folks are going to be not happy with the idea that the city is somehow, even in a small way, subsidizing airport users. But like I said, I want to see this go forward to council because I recognize these legal descriptions are necessary for us to be able to receive the taxes. So I will vote in favor. And with that, do you have any further comments? Okay, so all those in favor of the amended motion to approve the proposal from Mead and Hunt for the development of legal descriptions for airport hangars with the agreement subject to city administrator and city attorney approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agreement number 2, it's the agreement with Strand Associates for design, engineering, and bid services of the Century Allen, Century County Q, and Lake Street traffic signal upgrades and intersection reconfiguration. And this comes to us from Public Works.
We have Public Works. We would like to make a motion that we agreement with Strand and Associates.
Okay, I will second that. And this too needs to be contingent upon,
Oh, yeah, this is the one where we don't have the actual agreement. It's gonna be consistent with the standard template, but probably should still have that. contingency.
okay, let's let Sean say a few words and then I can make a substitute motion.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify, as part of our standard request for proposals, we do send along our template agreement, just telling potential respondents that they will be following this fill in the blank form. And they've all grown really accustomed to that. We just don't normally have time between Public Works consideration of proposals and finance personnel and the council's consideration of the agreement to get that all done.
And on this page, Sean, the last sentence of the first paragraph, the reference to Century and Lake should be Allen and Lake, I think.
Yes, it should.
Had Century on the mind. Just, I think in the resolution, or I'm sorry, in the elsewhere, it's clear. But I just wanted to note that on this page. Okay. And then I'm going to reiterate a comment I made at the Public Works Committee meeting. You both were there. And that is, I really think we need to make sure that whatever the agreement is, includes looking at a crosswalk on the east side of the intersection of Allen and Century, because people shouldn't have to cross 3 times in order to get across the street, especially at such a busy intersection. So since we don't have the actual agreement, can we just make sure that gets added, that staff adds that for consideration?
Yeah, I think Sean Alger already made a note.
Okay.
To talk with the consultant.
Okay, then I won't add that to my substitute motion, which is going to be, I move to recommend that the Common Council enter into an agreement with Strand Associates for the feasibility study at Lake Street and preliminary design, if warranted, and design and bidding services for the Century Allen, Century County Q, and Lake Street traffic signal upgrades and intersection reconfiguration at a cost not to exceed $137,700 per their submitted proposal, contingent upon city attorney's satisfaction of the pending agreement form to be based on the city's standard template. That's my substitute.
Okay, Orman would like to make a motion that we accept the.
Well, you would
I'm sorry,
second.
I
Yeah.
second. sorry.
It's much easier. Yeah. Okay, so we have a substitute motion
Second.
and a second. Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to recommend that council enter into an agreement with Strand Associates, it's showing on the screen, by the way, for the feasibility study at Lake Street and preliminary design if warranted, and design and bidding services for Century Allen, Century County Q, and Lake Street traffic signal upgrades and intersection reconfiguration at a cost not to exceed $137,700 per their submitted proposal, contingent upon city attorney's satisfaction of the pending agreement form to be based on the city's standard template. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Our final agreement is the agreement with Blue Stem Forestry Consultants, Inc. for professional services to complete a street tree inventory. This comes to us from PRFC. And I'm looking for a motion to recommend approval of the agreement with Blue Stem to complete a street tree inventory at a cost not to exceed $24,000 pending approval of Resolution 2024-28, amending the 2024 approved capital project budget for a Wisconsin DNR grant for the Parks projects.
Lorman will make a motion to your statement.
Okay, thank you, and I will second that. All right, Kevin, why don't you take the mic? Discussion. I'm gonna make a motion that we get brand new microphones. Everybody gets one.
There we go.
Is it?
It's green.
Okay. So there's been no update to our tree inventory, street tree inventory since 2015?
Our last inventory was in 2015. Updates have been made by city staff along the way. But 2015 is the last inventory.
The last big one, okay.
Yeah.
And how often do you recommend doing one?
I think the average lifespan is about 10 years. I think that's fair to say.
Okay, so we're not too far off. And explain, please, the 2024 and 2025 split. So how much will we spend this year? Is it the full 24,000?
This would be part of the
The grant?
forestry grant. So this would be, we would spend 12 of the 25 that you approved in the previous motion.
Okay,
And then 12 would be supported by the grant funding. In 2025, the total cost of the inventory for the whole cities with the street trees was $39,000. So 39.
okay. Okay, and just looking at the map, so most of District 6, which is north of Century, will be done next year, correct?
2025.
Okay, yes, because you're actually doing work this year. Got it. Okay.
That's our guess.
And we'll need to budget for that in our 2025 budget. And on page 106, it mentions there will be a limited visual re-inventory inspection. And I'm wondering if we haven't updated in almost 10 years, why not do a more detailed visual re-inventory inspection?
Say that one more time.
Sure, it's on page 106. It mentions somewhere on here, a limited visual, there it is, visual re-inventory inspection will be conducted. And I'm wondering, how is that limited? Or is there a way to avoid, like, is limiting it just a natural thing to do?
I think that's the language to describe that the below attributes are what we're counting, and
Okay.
we're not counting more than that.
Okay,
That would be my assumption of what that is.
okay. Thank you for that explanation. And then finally, the GIS data that's going to be available, I would love to eventually see this added to the city's GIS webpage. Yeah,
To have it as a public view
yep,
type platform.
yep, that's consistent with our strategic plan. So, Alder Lorman, do you have any questions, comments?
Nope.
Okay, so all those in favor of recommending approval of the agreement with Bluestem Forestry Consulting, Inc. to complete a street tree inventory at a cost not to exceed $24,000 pending approval of Resolution 2024-28, amending the 2024 approved capital project budget for Wisconsin DNR grant for the Parks project, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to the budget. Part 2 of part 1. Part B of part 1. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, yeah, I'll pick up with the second half of part 1, following our discussion from the previous meeting. Most of the slides that are in the packet are the same. There are just a couple of updates. And one of them is to the table that we were just looking at the end of the last meeting, which is the tax comparison. We just received today the information from the Department of Revenue to show the 2023 tax year collectible for the 2024 budget. The rates changed slightly. Middleton is continues to be one of the lower tax rate municipalities of the cities and villages in Dane County. The only ones that are lower are Wanakee, Verona, and Windsor. In particular, I wanted to note that some of the municipalities that have significantly higher tax rates, Madison, Sun Prairie, Fitchburg, are all looking at and having discussions about levy limit referenda. So even those that already have a higher base rate are in some of the same constraints that we are in looking at referendum. I'm not going to go through every slide in detail in here, just looking at the time. There's some background information in here about property tax levy limits. What I wanted to call your attention to is this slide that looks at the change in net new construction. And that is the primary way the city's operating levy increases, is the change in net new construction. Under state law, there is no adjustment in factor for inflation. So outside of something like a levy limit referendum or a TID closure or subtraction, the increase in the operating levy is limited to just that increase in net new construction. We've started to see a trend and a decline in the annual change in net new construction for the city. We had been averaging about 2.5%. As you see, we had a couple of years that were up around 3%. It varies year to year, but our average now has dropped to 1.9% if we look at this period of time. And if you look at the trend line, you can see that that is trending downward. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. First, that the larger your base property value becomes, the more and more net new construction you need on an annual basis to keep that percentage the same. The second is that Middleton, as you know, just has limited growth areas, especially compared to some of the municipalities with higher net new construction, like Sun Prairie and Fitchburg, that are still up over 3% annually. We're hoping that with some of the development going on, we will see this start to move up closer to where our average has been. But long term, it is a trend that we're getting more constrained on what that annual adjustment is in our operating levy. This next slide then takes that annual change in net new construction and compares it to the combined impact of both population growth and inflation using the Consumer Price Index. And if you look back to the earlier years in here, 2016 through 2020, when inflation was relatively low, inflation and population growth combined still outpaced net new construction in most years, but at least it was close. We saw a dramatic change in 2021 and 2022 with the sharp increase in inflation. We're starting to see inflation come down somewhat in 2023, but there's still a large gap between that difference in the allowable increase in the levy and what is driving our increased costs as we continue to grow and have inflation. And the next slide, again, tells that story. That this, instead of looking at the Consumer Price Index, looks at the annual change in the Employment Cost Index for state and local government workers. And what we're seeing is that that is continuing to remain high for government employees, higher than the percentage change for private sector employees and higher than general inflation. And the most recent information we have available is from first quarter this year, where state and local employment cost index was at 4.8%. We'll see where that trends as we get the information from second and then third quarter this year as we go into our budget. We're hoping to start to see that decline somewhat, but still a large gap between what we are seeing in employment costs and what our allowable levy increase is. And we're also seeing that locally when we look at other comparable municipalities, as well as looking at City of Madison and Dane County and what they're offering for increases and trying to compete with the local labor market. Because of all of those constraints on our property tax levy, the city has, over the past several years, had other measures to try to increase revenue to try to balance the budget. And I've listed just the last 5 years here and some of the larger items that were done in addition to property tax levy adjustments to increase revenue. A lot of these things are things that will increase your revenue going forward, but it's not something that we will have increases of this size going forward in the future. So for example, in the most recent budget, we had a large increase in state shared revenue, about 542,000. That definitely was very welcome, helped to balance our budget and be able to meet our operational needs going forward. That will be part of our base going forward, and we anticipate that there will be some increases as state funding is tied to increase in the state sales tax, but we're not expecting to see that size jump in a single year going forward. 2023, we had the increase from the referendum, as well as annual payments from the Pleasant View Golf Course to support general fund operations. We had a TID subtraction in 2022. Adjustments to our utilities and shifting of public fire protection from the utility bills. As we look to the future and what other options we have available, the big one that is coming in the future will be TIF District number 3 closure. When that is closed, the city will receive a levy limit adjustment based on 50% of the incremental value within that TID. And based on the timeline that we had discussed at the committee of the whole meeting earlier this year, we're anticipating paying off remaining project costs potentially in 2026. If the city exercises the option to extend the life of the TID by an additional year for affordable housing, that would move our termination year to 2027 and likely be impacting us for our 2028 budget. That will definitely be helpful. I think the challenge for us is going to be bridging that gap between now and 2028 with our 25, 26, and 27 budgets. Looking big picture, what are some of the other revenue options that are out there? The first one we discussed earlier this evening, the stormwater utility fee. If the city were to consider an increase in the stormwater utility fee, and if that is approved by referendum, to the extent that there are some costs that are being covered by property taxes that can be shifted to the stormwater utility, that may free up some room within our property taxes to fund other operating needs of the city. Other items that are allowed by state law are very limited in Wisconsin. There is a wheel tax, which is an additional fee on vehicle registrations that's used locally by Dane County, City of Madison, and Village of Oregon. Not generally a popular fee and something that in the past the council has not chosen to go down that route, and same with most other municipalities in the area. There's a transportation utility that some municipalities in the state have created, although at this point, the legal status of that is uncertain. There was a case for City of Pewaukee utility fee was challenged. That was rejected by the appellate court. I believe that is still under appeal, so we're waiting to see what ultimately the Supreme Court will rule on the viability of creating transportation utilities. Other municipalities often have charges for refuse and recycling services. And if you look at several of our peer communities within Dane County, those fees are very common. The city could require or could establish a per parcel fee for recycling without a referendum. However, this is a covered service under state law where you would have to go to referendum if you were to impose a refuse charge. And then, of course, the last one would be a separate referendum looking at a levy limit. There aren't any of these that we're specifically looking at for 2025, but just something that we should review the available options. And as we look to the future, at some point, the city may need to consider another levy limit referendum in the future. And that'll be part of our discussions. And when we get to the part 2, we'll kind of outline the next 5-year projection and what we're looking at. But I think the reality is that under current levy limit laws and net new construction being currently under 2%, that at some point municipalities are likely going to have to look at a referendum as the only major new funding source available. With that, just turning briefly to the budget process and timeline, there are no proposed changes in the overall development process to the process that we used for the 2024 budget. This last slide outlines the tentative timeline. We'd be looking in July to do the second part of the budget kickoff and getting specifically into future projections and issues for the 2025 budget. Sending out our budget forms to departments mid-July, asking for department requests back mid-August. Then we will work on meeting with departments, reviewing their budgets, and working with the mayor and administrator to put together the proposed budget book by the target would be September 13th. The date coming up that we would need to work on scheduling, and we don't need to set tonight, but I would say maybe at one of our July meetings, we should try to narrow down on a date for a finance committee budget work session sometime in late September. And then that would set up for October and November for meetings for the finance committee and then the council to review the budget, hold the public hearing, and approve the budget by mid-November. You have to answer any questions. I went through that quickly, but want to be respectful of the time with council
Great.
coming up.
Thank you, Bill. Do you have any questions, Alderman Lerman?
Thank
I don't have any either. You covered it very thoroughly and, yeah, let's hope that maybe a new, shift in the legislature might lead to at least some tweaks to the levy limit law that increases for inflation every year to make it less of a burden on municipalities. Okay, the last item on our agenda is miscellaneous. It's the 5-year street improvement plan, which comes to us from Public Works, Plan Commission, Ped Bike and Transit, and now it's on our agenda. So we needed a motion to recommend this to council, Bill.
Yeah, that is my understanding.
So I'm looking for a motion to recommend that council approve the 5-year street improvement plan.
Former second?
No, you make the motion. Sorry.
right.
It's tough when there are only two of
I'm
them.
pulling my notes back up. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 5-year street improvement plan.
And I will second that. Discussion. You're on Public Works, so did you have anything to relay?
No,
Okay.
anything that works.
I will just mention, I'm very happy that High Road is on the plan for 2028 reconstruction. I'm on both the Plan Commission and Ped Bike and Transit, and I noted they had some comments they're showing on the screen. And I'm in favor of approving this street improvement plan with the understanding that those comments will be factored in when the time comes. Sean, can you confirm that'll be the case?
I haven't coordinated with Daphne on those extra comments. Sean Alsrud from our office has really been shepherding this and done an awful lot of work on it. But I think that's our goal, yes, is to take all of this input into a plan that we can put together for a budget.
Great, thank you. And then also I can approve this with the understanding that we will be discussing whether, and if so, how to increase our $4 million cap on capital borrowing each year, which would give Public Works more flexibility to work in projects. Bill?
I just want to note that Daphne is on the Zoom and has her hand raised.
Oh, hi Daphne, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Sean was saying. I will be coordinating with Sean Alsrud and passing on Plan Commission and Ped Bike Transit's comments.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I would only add, we have more than passed our staff capacity with the budget we do have. So I'm not saying we can't use more money and do more good, but we don't have the staff capacity right now to do that.
Understood. Okay, all those in favor of approving the 5-year street improvement plan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. That's the end of our agenda, so we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.